My grandfather built a wall once. I don't remember where. I don't remember why. I remember his hands, how they moved through the mud like they were reading something written inside it. He pressed each stone into place without looking. His fingers knew. The wall stood for years after he was gone. I never asked him how he chose the stones. I should have asked. That memory comes back to me now, crouching in the sand, staring at the eastern ridge where the sky has turned the color of old copper. Not sunset copper. Wrong copper. The kind that means the air is filling with what it shouldn't carry. Soraya saw it before I did. She always does. An hour ago, she stopped what she was doing, mending the edge of our sleeping mat, and tilted her head the way she does when something shifts in the atmosphere that only her body registers. She didn't point. She didn't gesture. She just set the mat down and looked east and held that look for a long time. I followed her gaze. Nothing visible yet. But the silence had changed. The small birds that nest in the scrub near our camp had gone quiet. Not sleeping quiet, hiding quiet. There's a difference. One is natural. The other is a warning. We've been here 9 days. This stretch of flat ground between two low ridges seemed like a good place to rest, sheltered from the worst of the afternoon sun, close enough to the dry riverbed where Soraya found moisture under the gravel 3 days ago. A decent camp, but decent means nothing when the wind decides to remind you whose land this really is. I've lived through sandstorms before. The small ones sting your face and fill your ears and pass in 20 minutes. You cover your mouth, close your eyes, wait. Those are annoyances, conversations the desert has with itself. But the ones that come from the east, the ones that turn the sky that wrong shade of copper, those are different. Those can bury a camp, tear fabric, blind a goat. I've seen it. The sand doesn't just blow. It moves like water, like a river made of tiny knives. We need a wall, not tomorrow, not when the storm is closer and the wind makes standing difficult. Now. Today. With whatever this land offers, which isn't much but might be enough. I stand and scan the ground around our camp. The landscape here is mostly flat hardpan, cracked clay and compacted sand that hasn't seen rain in months. But there are stones, scattered across the surface like the desert dropped them and forgot. Flat ones, round ones, some the size of my fist, others I'd need both arms to lift. And there are the bushes, dry, thorny grey-green scrub that grows in stubborn clusters wherever some ancient root found the ghost of water underground. Between the stones and the scrub and the clay beneath our feet, that's our inventory. That's what the wall gets built from. I start collecting stones, the flat ones first. Those are the foundation. My grandfather would have approved of that instinct. Flat stones don't roll, don't shift, don't betray you when weight presses down from above. I carry them 4, 5 at a time in the fold of my shirt, stacking them near the eastern edge of camp, where the wind will hit first. Each trip is 40 paces out and 40 paces back. The stones are heavy. The sun is not kind, but the copper sky is still there, and it's not fading. It's thickening. Soraya has already started on the mud. I noticed this on my 3rd trip back. She's dug a shallow pit near the water spot, maybe half a meter wide, and she's mixing clay with the gritty sand and a small amount of water from our reserves. Her hands work the mixture in a rhythm I recognize, not random, not hurried. Circular motions, folding the wet clay over the dry, pressing air out, folding again. She learned this from somewhere. Her grandmother, maybe, or her mother. She never told me, and I never asked. Some knowledge doesn't need a story behind it. It just exists in the hands. The consistency she's working toward is specific. I can tell because she keeps testing it, pinching a small amount between her fingers, stretching it, watching how it breaks. Too wet and it'll crack as it dries. Too dry and it won't bind the stones. She needs it somewhere in between, somewhere that holds but breathes. I've tried making this mixture before. Mine always cracked. Hers doesn't. I stopped trying to understand why. By the time I've gathered 30 or 40 good foundation stones, the pile looks almost respectable. I lay them in a line along the eastern edge of camp, end to end. The flattest faces down. The line stretches about 4 meters. Not long enough to shield everything, but enough to protect the sleeping area and the fire pit and the place where we store our food and water. I press each stone into the hard pan, twisting slightly to seat it. Some of them settle immediately. Others need convincing. A scoop of loose sand removed, a smaller stone wedged underneath for balance. The first row takes longer than it should. My back complains, my knees complain louder. The sun is directly overhead now, and the heat radiates up from the ground as much as it presses down from the sky. I'm caught between 2 fires. The sweat on my arms dries before it can drip. That's how you know the humidity has dropped to almost nothing. The air is drinking faster than your body can give. I drink, small sips. We don't have enough water to be generous with ourselves. Soraya brings the first batch of mud to the wall line. She carries it in a shallow bowl made from a curved piece of bark she saved weeks ago. I don't even remember from which camp. She has this ability to keep things. Small things. Things that seem useless until the moment they become essential. The bark bowl holds maybe 2 kilograms of the clay mixture, dark brown and glistening, and she sets it down beside my stone line and immediately goes back for more. I begin mortaring, spreading the clay between the foundation stones, filling the gaps where sand would blow through. The mixture is cool against my fingers, almost pleasant. It grips the stone surfaces and holds. I press it into every crack, every void, smoothing the outer face, but leaving the inner side rough. Rough surfaces bond better with the next layer. My grandfather taught me that. Or maybe I'm imagining he did. Maybe I just know it from years of watching the desert break things apart and learning what holds and what doesn't. The second row of stones goes faster. Smaller stones now, stacked on top of the foundation with clay between each one. I'm building maybe half a meter high at this point. The wall is thick, nearly the width of my forearm, because thin walls are promises the wind breaks easily. Each stone I place gets a fistful of mud on top and around it. Press, hold, wait for it to grip, move to the next. The rhythm becomes automatic. Hands know what to do. Mind wanders. I think about the last storm we endured without shelter, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. We were crossing open ground with no ridges, no rocks, nothing to hide behind. When the wind came, we lay flat on the ground with our blankets over our heads and our faces pressed into the sand. It lasted maybe 40 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. When it passed, we were half buried. Sand in our ears, our nostrils, the creases of our eyes. Soraya's headscarf had been ripped loose and her hair was full of grit. She spent an hour combing it out with her fingers, patient as always, not angry at the storm, just dealing with what it left behind. I told myself then that we wouldn't get caught like that again. And now here I am, building the thing I should have built weeks ago. The wall reaches my knees. It doesn't look like much yet. A rough line of mudded stones, still wet, still settling. But the base is solid, and the clay is gripping, and when I push against it with my palm, nothing shifts. Good. The desert will push much harder than my palm, but you start with what you can test. Soraya returns. Not with mud this time. She's carrying an armful of dead scrub, the thick woody stalks of the bushes that grow in the shallow drainage channels. She drops them near the wall and goes back for more without pausing. I watch her walk away and notice how she moves. Efficient, no wasted steps. Her body angled slightly against the breeze that's starting to pick up. She knows what she's gathering and why. I don't, yet, but I've learned to trust what she brings. On her third trip, I understand. She starts breaking the stalks into pieces the length of her forearm and laying them horizontally across the top of the wall, pressing them into the wet clay. Then, she places stones on top of the stalks, then more clay. The wood acts as reinforcement, the same way straw works in adobe. It binds the layers together, gives the clay something to grip internally so it doesn't just crack and crumble when the wind hits. Tensile strength. She wouldn't use that word. She'd just show you her grandmother's house, still standing after decades, and let you figure it out. This changes the wall. With the wood latticed through the clay layers, the structure feels different under my hands. More unified. Less like a pile of stones held together by hope, and more like an actual thing. A built thing, an intentioned thing. I start incorporating her method into every layer. Stones, clay, wood. Stones, clay, wood. The pattern becomes a language the wall speaks as it rises. My hands are raw. The clay has dried on my skin in layers, brown, cracked, pulling at the hair on my forearms. My fingertips are scraped from handling rough stone. There's a cut on my left thumb that I don't remember getting. It doesn't bleed anymore. Too dry for that. The blood just sealed itself with dust and clay and became another layer of this place on my body. The desert marks you. You can wash it off, but it comes back. Eventually, you stop washing. The wall is at my waist now, over 1/2 meter and growing. The lower sections are already starting to dry in the heat, the clay turning lighter, harder, setting into something that might actually resist what's coming. I press my ear against the base and knock with my knuckle. Dense. Solid. The sound doesn't echo. It absorbs. Good sign. Soraya is working on something else now. 20 paces south of the wall. She's pulling up clumps of the scrub bushes, entire plants, roots and all. The soil here is loose enough in patches that the roots come up in tangles, trailing dirt and small stones. She shakes the soil loose and carries the root balls to the wall. When she arrives, she starts weaving the roots into the upper layer of clay, not just laying them flat like the stalks. Weaving. Over and under. Threading them through the gaps between stones, pulling them tight. The roots are flexible, still alive enough to bend without snapping. They lace through the wall like stitching through fabric. I stop and watch her work for a moment. Her fingers move with that same certainty I saw in my grandfather's hands. No hesitation, no second guessing. She knows where each root goes, because she understands what the wall needs before the wall knows it needs it. The root network will hold the upper layers together when the wind tries to peel them apart. Clay alone can resist compression, things pushing in. But it's weak against tension, things pulling apart. The roots fix that. She fixed that, without a word. I feel something I can't name. Respect is too small a word. Gratitude isn't right either. It's more like recognition. The sudden, clear understanding that I would not survive out here without her. Not because I'm weak, because she sees what I miss. She builds what I can't imagine. She carries knowledge in her body that I only carry in fragments of memory. We work in silence for the next hour. The wall grows. 3/4 meter, then higher. I'm running out of good stones nearby, so my trips get longer. 60 paces now. 80. Each load weighs more in my arms on the way back because my muscles are forgetting how to hold things. I drink again. The water bag is noticeably lighter. The wind picks up. Not storm wind yet. Advance wind. The kind that comes before, testing the ground, seeing what's loose, what it can take without trying. Sand grains skip across the hardpan like tiny insects. My turban flutters. Soraya's headscarf presses against her face. The copper sky has spread. It's not just east anymore. It's overhead. The light has changed. Dimmer, Filtered, the sun somewhere behind a veil of suspended dust that hasn't reached the ground yet. We have time, but not as much as I'd like. I decide the wall needs to be higher, a meter at least. Waist height might block the worst of the low-driven sand, but a real storm throws it at every angle. We need protection we can crouch behind, something that breaks the wind enough to let us breathe. The problem is weight. The higher the wall goes, the more it wants to fall. Stone and clay are heavy. Without proper foundation, without tapering, the whole thing could topple inward, which would be worse than no wall at all. So I start narrowing. The base is thick, forearm width. The top will be thinner, maybe a hand span. Each layer steps inward slightly, a finger width on each side. This creates a gentle slope, a lean against the wind direction. The thickest part faces east, the thinnest faces us. Physics. The wind pushes against the widest surface, and the weight of the wall resists. At least, that's the theory. I've never built a wall this high before. My grandfather did. I didn't. Soraya notices my narrowing technique and adapts without being told. She starts preparing smaller stones for the upper layers, choosing flat ones the size of her palm, uniform enough to stack cleanly in the thinning width. She sorts them by size in a line on the ground, a mason's prep work done instinctively. I pick from her sorted line and place them. The efficiency doubles. We're not talking. We don't need to. The wall is the conversation. My back has stopped complaining. It's moved past complaint into a kind of resigned numbness. My shoulders burn where the muscles connect to my neck. My knees have sand embedded in the skin from kneeling. Every few minutes I stand and stretch and look at the sky and feel the wind on my face and try to calculate how much time we have. The copper color is darkening at the eastern horizon, deepening towards something between rust and dried blood. The advance wind is steadier now, not gusting but constant, a low hum across the flat ground. The wall reaches my chest, nearly a meter. The lower half is dry and hard, almost like natural rock. You'd have to look closely to see it's built, not found. The upper half is still damp, still curing, the clay dark and the wood pieces visible like bones in flesh. I worry about this. Wet clay is weaker than dry. If the storm comes before the upper layers set, the wind could erode them, peel them back, reduce everything above waist height to nothing. And the upper half is what matters most. It's the difference between crouching low and barely sheltered versus sitting comfortably behind a real barrier. I need the sun to do its work. But the sun is disappearing behind that copper veil. Soraya solves this. Of course she does. She gathers the remaining dry scrub. Not the thick stalks this time, but the thin, branchy parts, the fingertip-sized twigs with dried leaves still attached, and starts pressing them into the outer face of the wet upper wall. Not inside. Outside. She covers the damp clay surface with a layer of dry brush, creating a kind of insulating shell. The brush does two things. It shields the wet clay from direct wind erosion. The sand hits the brush instead of the clay, and the brush is flexible enough to absorb the impact without tearing away. And it adds texture. Instead of a smooth, wet surface, the wind can grip and pull. There's a rough, chaotic surface that breaks the airflow into turbulence. Wind can't grip what it can't flow smoothly over. She steps back and looks at her work, adjusts a few branches, pushes one deeper into the clay, nods once, barely visible. That nod means she's satisfied. It means the wall will hold. Her confidence is more reassuring than anything I could test with my hands. We build a small return wall on the southern end, a short L-shape extension, maybe a meter long, angling back toward camp. This breaks the wind that would otherwise curl around the edge of the main wall and hit us from the side. The desert wind is not stupid. It finds gaps. It wraps around obstacles. You have to think like the wind to defend against it. Where would I go if I were the wind and this wall stood in my way? Around the edges. So we close the edges. Not perfectly. We don't have time or materials for a full enclosure, but enough to redirect. The northern end gets the same treatment. Another short wing angled back. Our camp is now in a rough U-shape, open to the west, the direction the storm isn't coming from. The main wall faces east. The wings protect the flanks. Inside this U, there's enough space for our sleeping area, the fire pit, and our supplies. It's not a house. It's not even close. But it's something between us and what's coming, and that's more than we had this morning. I step back and look at what we've built. The main wall stands just over a meter high, stretching 4 meters across the eastern approach. The clay has started to lighten where it's drying. The embedded wood and roots create a web of reinforcement, visible only at the edges where the clay is thin. The brush covering on the windward face gives it a wild look, like the desert grew it instead of us building it. That's probably good. The things that survive out here don't fight the landscape. They become part of it. Soraya is sitting beside the wall now, her back against the western face, resting in the thin strip of shade it casts. Her hands are covered in dried clay up to her elbows. Her headscarf has slipped back, and loose strands of hair, dark threaded with grey, fall across her forehead. She's tired. I can see it in the way she holds her shoulders, slightly forward, slightly collapsed. But she doesn't look worried. She looks like someone who knows the work is done and the rest is up to the wind. I sit beside her. The shade is narrow but real. The wall at my back feels solid. I lean against it and feel no give, no shift. The stones and clay and wood and roots and brush hold together like they've agreed on something. A pact. An understanding that tonight at least they serve a purpose. We eat. Bread from yesterday, dry but filling. A few dates, water, careful sips, each one counted. The food tastes better than it should. Everything tastes better when your body has earned it. When your hands built the shelter you're eating inside, there's a connection between the labor and the meal that the desert insists on. You don't eat here for free. You eat because you worked, and the food knows it. The wind is stronger now. Not storm yet, but approaching storm. The constant hum has become a low whistle where the air finds gaps in the ridge above us. Sand moves across the ground in sheets, flat and fast, ankle-height rivers of grit flowing west. The wall catches them. I watch from the sheltered side as sand accumulates at the base of the windward face. A small drift forming, growing, the desert reinforcing our wall with its own material. That's an unexpected gift. The sand drift acts as a buttress, adds weight to the base, seals the bottom edge where small gaps let thin streams of dust through. The sky is fully copper now. The sun has become a pale disk, barely visible, a ghost of itself behind the suspended dust. Visibility drops. The eastern ridge, clearly defined an hour ago, is now a smudge, a suggestion of a shape. The world is shrinking, pulling inward. Everything beyond 100 paces is vanishing into a brown-orange haze. I check our preparations. Sleeping mats rolled tight and placed against the western base of the wall, the most sheltered spot. Blankets folded on top, water bags sealed and buried slightly in sand to keep it from being knocked over. Food wrapped in cloth and tucked between the mats. Fire supplies, the wood we gathered yesterday, stacked in the corner where the main wall meets the southern wing. Everything inside the U, everything accounted for. Soraya has wrapped her headscarf tighter, covering her mouth and nose, leaving only her eyes exposed. Her eyes are calm, watchful. She's looking east, through the thin gap between the top of the wall and the line of brush she fixed along it. Watching the storm come, not with fear, with attention. The way you watch something you respect, but don't bow to. I wrap my own turban across my face. The fabric smells like dust and sweat, and something else. The faint mineral scent of the clay we've been handling all day. My hands smell like the wall, my arms, my clothes. We've become part of what we built. The first real gust hits like a fist, not gradual, not gentle. A sudden slam of air and sand against the eastern face of the wall. I feel it through my back, a shudder that runs through the stone and clay and into my spine. The brush on the windward side rattles and hisses as the sand blasts through it, but it holds. The wall holds. The shudder doesn't become a crack. The rattle doesn't become a collapse. It just absorbs the hit and settles. The second gust comes harder, then the third. Then they stop being individual gusts and become a continuous assault. A roaring wall of wind-driven sand that turns the air opaque. I can't see the eastern ridge anymore. I can barely see the top of our wall 3 paces in front of me. The world has reduced itself to this. The narrow space behind the wall, the sound of sand hitting stone, and Soraya beside me with her eyes closed now. Not sleeping, just conserving. The wall sings. I don't know how else to describe it. The wind finds the textures in the brush and the gaps between stones and the contours of dried clay and produces a sound. Low, unsteady, almost animal. Like something breathing hard. Like the wall itself is alive and straining against what pushes it. I press my hand flat against the inner face. I can feel the vibration. The whole structure is under stress, resonating, but not breaking, not shifting. The vibration is steady, even. The wall is working. It's doing what we built it to do. Time becomes strange in a storm. Minutes stretch. The roar is constant and everywhere, and it fills your ears until you stop hearing it as sound and start feeling it as pressure. A weight on your chest, a thickness in the air that makes breathing shallow. I pull my turban tighter and breathe through the cloth and try to count my breaths as a way of counting time, but I lose track after a while and just exist in the noise and the pressure and the dim copper light that filters through the dust. Sand comes over the top of the wall. Of course it does. A meter isn't enough to block everything. The wind throws sand higher than that, arcs it over the barrier, drops it into our sheltered space like a siege. But it's reduced, filtered. Instead of the full blast, we get a thinned stream, annoying but survivable. I pull the blanket over our heads. Under it the air is warmer, staler, but cleaner. We breathe each other's recycled air, and it's still better than breathing sand. Soraya's hand finds mine under the blanket. Her fingers are rough with dried clay. She squeezes once. Not hard, just enough. The gesture means something. I'm here, we're here, the wall is here. We built this together and it's holding. I squeeze back. The same message. The only message that matters in a storm. The wall takes a hit that makes me flinch. A deeper sound, a thud, rather than the constant hiss. Something heavy struck the windward face. A rock carried by the wind, maybe, or a chunk of debris from somewhere upwind. I feel the impact through my back. The wall shifts, just barely. A millimeter of movement that I might be imagining. I press harder against it. Hold my breath. Wait for the crack, the crumble, the slow motion collapse that would leave us exposed. Nothing. The wall absorbs the impact and returns to its steady vibration. The roots hold. The wood reinforcement holds. The clay, dried enough now in the lower layers, holds. Whatever hit us is now just another piece of debris buried in the growing sand drift on the windward side. I realize I've been holding my breath. I release it. My lungs ache. The storm doesn't end cleanly. It fades in stages. The roar diminishes to a howl, the howl to a moan, the moan to a whisper. The sand in the air thins. Visibility expands. 10 paces, 20, 50. The eastern ridge reappears as a dark line against a sky that's still dusty, but no longer opaque. The copper fades to something more like amber, then something more like evening. I pull the blanket down. Look around. Our camp is changed. Sand covers everything. A thin layer, maybe 2 centimeters, coating every surface. The sleeping mats are dusted. The firewood is buried. But everything is here. Everything stayed. The wall did its work. On the windward side, The drift has grown to nearly 1/2 meter at the base, a smooth ramp of new sand pressed against the stone and clay. The wall looks different now. Weathered, baptized. The brush covering is stripped in places, the clay surface exposed and sandblasted smooth in patterns that look almost carved. But the structure is intact. Not a single stone has fallen. Not a single section has crumbled. The roots, Soraya wove into the upper layers, are visible where the sand scoured the clay thin, a dark, fibrous network gripping everything together. I walk the length of the wall, running my hand along the inner face. Solid, cool to the touch now that the sun is low. My fingers find the places where I pressed the first stones into the first layer of clay this morning, and they feel permanent, like they've been here for years. Soraya stands on the other side of the wall, inspecting the windward face. She runs her hand over the sand-blasted surface, the way you'd check a wound. Gentle, clinical, looking for damage. She finds a spot near the southern wing where the clay cracked slightly, a hairline fracture running vertically for maybe 30 centimeters. She studies it, touches it. Then she picks up a handful of the fresh sand that the storm deposited, mixes it with the last of the clay we left in the bark bowl, and presses it into the crack with her thumb. She smooths it, seals it. Maintenance. Already. The wall isn't finished because it was built. It's an ongoing thing, a living negotiation with the elements. I start clearing sand from the camp, shaking out the sleeping mats, uncovering the firewood, brushing the fine layer of grit from our food wrappings. Everything needs tending. The storm didn't destroy anything, but it touched everything, left its signature everywhere. The fire takes longer to start than usual. The kindling is coated in fine sand that insulates the wood from the spark. I scrape each piece clean with my thumbnail before arranging them.
Yes.
Soraya kneels beside me and cups her hands around the first small flame, shielding it from the residual breeze that still carries the storm's last whispers. The flame catches, grows, becomes something we can sit beside and trust. We eat again, the same bread, the same dates. But I taste the sand in everything now, a fine grit between my teeth that won't leave no matter how carefully I chew. The desert's reminder. You can build a wall, you can shelter behind it, but the desert still finds its way in, not to destroy, just to remind you where you are, who decides what stays and what goes. The fire settles into steady coals. The wind has died to almost nothing. Stars appear in patches where the dust is clearing, dim at first, then brighter as the sky scrubs itself clean. The wall beside us casts a sharp shadow in the firelight. Our shadow, Soraya's and mine, merged into the wall's shadow on the sand. She reaches over and brushes sand from my beard, a small gesture. Automatic. The kind of thing you do for someone after decades of doing it. I don't flinch. I just let her hand do its work, the way I let her hands do everything, with a competence that makes the act feel not like care, but like correction. Adjustment. Putting things back the way they should be. The wall stands between us and the east, solid, real. A thing we made from what the land gave us. It held today. It held through the worst of what the wind brought. But the night is long. The temperature drops fast when the sky clears, and I heard something in the distance before the stars came out. A low rumble that might have been the tail end of the storm, or might have been the beginning of the next one. Out here you can never be sure. The desert doesn't announce its plans, it just acts. I look at the wall, 1 meter of stone and clay and roots and brush. 1 meter between us, and whatever comes next. It held once. Will it hold again? Will the clay, dried and cracked and patched, survive another battering? Will the roots keep gripping? Will the stones stay seated? Soraya is already asleep. Her breathing is slow even. She trusts the wall. She trusts what her hands built into it. I pull the blanket over her shoulders and sit with my back against the stone. The fire crackles low. The stars multiply. Somewhere east, The desert is still moving, still carrying sand, still deciding what to test next. I'll know by morning.